years now, the difference between a good and a not so good iPhone photo hasn't been whether you're using the best and newest iPhone. And yet, even the results of the latest iPhone may rarely look like those in Apple's commercials. And even though there are professionals at work in the commercials who have a lot of experience, there are 10 simple rules you should follow if you really want to take better photos with your iPhone. Pay attention to the light. The first rule is also one of the most important. Your iPhone will always automatically adjust the exposure of a photo so that the photo is as well exposed as possible. Faces are automatically detected and brightened if necessary. Dark areas are also artificially brightened. Nevertheless, when you take a photo with your iPhone, don't just shoot away, but always ask yourself the following questions. Where is the light coming from? How strong is it? And what effect will it have on your photo? This is a basic rule in photography and does not apply to iPhone photos in particular. And even though the iPhone tries to artificially process every photo to make it appear optimally exposed, the right light will make the difference between a good photo and a bad one, even on an iPhone. So what should you know when it comes to lighting?
For the most part, you'll take the best photos in soft light, which tends to be in the morning or evening. Under the midday sun, there will be strong shadows, which is usually perceived as boring or even unpleasant. Especially for landscape shots, you should therefore consciously choose the time of day for your photos. For portraits, you usually have the possibility to turn or position your subject so that the light comes from the right direction. Pay attention to how the exposure of the face changes when I turn in a circle. The iPhone automatically adjusts the exposure so that the face remains brightly exposed. Rarely, however, should you have your subject look directly at the sun. Most of the time when shooting people, you'll get better results with the sun in the background or slightly to the side.
When shooting indoors, on the other hand, you can use the window as a large soft light source and position your subject directly at the window. Of course, this doesn't apply if the sun is shining directly into the window. Ceiling lights usually lead to very poor results. By the way, don't use the flash. Even if the lighting conditions are bad, you won't get really good photos with the flash. And one more thing about the exposure of photos with the iPhone. The iPhone tends to overexpose photos constantly. In most cases, you should reduce the exposure a bit for a better photo. But how do you do that? And that brings us to the second rule. Know exactly the features and settings of your iPhone camera. Only then will you be able to take the best possible photos depending on the situation. On the iPhone, for example, there are two different ways to correct the exposure. You tap on an area in the image that should be in focus and then swipe your finger down slightly. Now the automatic will expose the photo a little darker. If you move your iPhone and the exposure is readjusted, the correction is deleted. If you want to constantly expose your photos a little darker, then swipe your finger slightly upwards. An additional menu opens. Here you select the icon with the plus minus. By swiping to the left and right, you can permanently change the exposure. Now all your future photos will be exposed brighter or darker. The icon here in the upper left corner reminds you that the exposure compensation is active. Just like this feature, the camera app has several other features and settings to help you get the most out of your iPhone depending on the situation. I've made a very detailed video on the settings and features of the camera app. Check it out if you want to know more about it. By the way, you can find links to all the videos I'll mention today in the video description. There you can also find a video about some of the best but unknown features of the camera app. But what you surely know is the significance of these numbers. You use the number to select the lens, or rather the camera of your iPhone. My iPhone 14 Pro has 3 cameras. 0.5 stands for the ultra-wide camera, 1 for the main camera and 3 for the camera with the telephoto lens. If you tap and hold the number, you can zoom in and out just like using 2 fingers. And that's exactly what you should avoid, because every step or zoom factor that is between the cameras of your iPhone, so for example between 1 and 3 or 0.5 and 1, and of course also above the factor of the telephoto lens, so above 3, leads to digital zoom, and that in turn leads to a reduction in image quality. On an iPhone 14, 13 or 12, all non-Pro models, this would be any factor above 1. So for optimal image quality, you should avoid zooming digitally.
But there's something else you should know about the choice of cameras. It not only affects the zoom factor, but also the look of the image. I would say that very many simply take out their iPhone and choose the camera depending on how far away the subject is, without giving further thought to what effect the choice of lens might have on the image. However, the ultra-wide lens results in a completely different look than the main lens or the telephoto lens. It results in much more distortions. Objects in the foreground look oversized, objects in the background look very small. This makes it possible to show spatial depth very well. However, the distortions are a big disadvantage when taking pictures of people. Here you should avoid the ultra-wide lens and use the telephoto lens if possible, provided your iPhone has one. This is because the main camera of your iPhone already has a relatively wide lens, which leads to distortions. On the other hand, the main camera has the widest aperture and is therefore the best choice in low light conditions.
And choosing the right lens already has to do with our next topic, composition. Quite often, you'll just take out your iPhone and without giving much thought to the composition of your image, just take a photo of your subject. But if you want to take better photos, here's what you should do. Before you press the shutter button, stop and think for a moment. What could you change about the composition of the image to take a better picture? Composition already sounds a lot like art, but it's not witchcraft. Here are a few quick and easy rules. Activate the grid in the settings of the camera app and follow the rule of thirds as often as possible. Don't always position your subject in the center, but often along the lines of thirds. This may not always lead to better results, but often it does. Usually the simpler the composition, the better. Too many elements will ruin the image, so be careful not to pack too much into the frame. Pay attention to the background. What is there? Is it distracting? Does it look good? Would there be a better background? You can learn even more about this topic in my iPhone photography tutorial. But one very simple rule that is unfortunately still often overlooked but is so important that I'm dedicating a separate point to it here is: make sure you have a straight horizon. Nothing can ruin a photo more easily and effectively than a crooked horizon, especially if the horizon consists of a line, like at the sea. If you still took a photo with a crooked horizon, open the photo, select Edit, then Straighten and tap on Auto. Your iPhone will automatically straighten the horizon. By the way, many never edit their iPhone photos. Unfortunately, editing often makes the difference between an average photo and a good one. And even if all those short tutorials on TikTok, Reels or Shorts make you believe that the special thing about the photo lies exclusively in the composition or the exposure, the photos shown are actually always heavily edited. And you can't get around that. Editing photos on the iPhone is fine, but takes time and some practice. For example, I often use the app Snapseed or Lightroom in addition to the Photos app. You can also find a tutorial on editing photos on the iPhone on my channel. Of course, there are many apps for editing. Some of them use cool filters or presets. In this context, I would like to give you the next rule on the way. Avoid too strong filters or using the same filters or presets all the time. I edited almost all the photos I took with my first iPhone with the same extreme and unrealistic filters. It looked pretty cool to me. Today I can only shake my head at it. In fact, your iPhone is already processing the photo in the camera without being asked. As I said before, dark areas or faces are brightened, edges are sharpened, and so on. The photo sometimes looks overprocessed by itself. This can't be avoided either, at least not with the default camera app. If this bothers you and you want to get serious about editing your photos and you own a Pro model, you should enable the RAW mode. Before we get to the last and perhaps most important rule, a quick question. How often have you cleaned your camera's lenses? Unfortunately, I do this far too infrequently myself. But since the lens glass should always be clean for a good photo, remember to do it sometimes. In addition to simple rules like this, I've recommended other tutorials to you a few times today. Still, I'm convinced of one thing. No tutorial can replace personal experience. Nothing will have a bigger impact on the quality of your photos than practice. So pick up your iPhone as often as you can and consciously take photos and think about what you succeeded in and what you didn't succeed in. This is the most effective way to improve quickly. It's also how you learn what you like or don't like about a photo. There is no substitute for personal experience. That said, of course I'd be happy to recommend a whole bunch of tutorials that you can watch anytime you need to, and that will certainly help you progress even faster. I'll put together a list that you'll find in the video description. So if the video was interesting for you, give me a like as feedback. There will be more iPhone tutorials, of course, so stay tuned and see you next time.